today's patient behaves like a consumer.
Ganesh, do you think this is still a more of a boardroom discussion, or it's something that consumer-centricity is part of meeting room agenda?
One smoker came and gave a very, very rich insight. And he said, smoking or cigarette is my friend. So if we are working on a category where you want people to change their behavior, stop their smoking, you have to go an extra mile for that. A packaging person came up and said, I want to use the very simple notch on the top of the bottle where people with arthritis condition can just put a pencil or pen and twist it much easier. That innovation didn't cost much to produce. We essentially handed over to the commercial group, marketing group, to say, now you have a best product, you have best packaging, now get this best claim and market it. So if we had not captured that, you wouldn't have, or marketing wouldn't have that great claim that it starts to work in 3 minutes or so.
You were not just giving a pill, but you were giving altogether an experience.
Always I had my blinders that, like smoking, which is also a behavioral category, that you can just stop smoking. Why can't people, those who are trying to lose weight, why can't they just stop eating?
And lastly, I really feel, which is a very important point you said, is that add value, and it need not necessarily be adding cost. Hi, welcome to yet another episode of Complexity to Clarity, Pharma, Healthcare and More with me, Gauri Chaudhari. A few days back, I was visiting Aurangabad for some work. It was a month end, so I thought, why not visit Aushadhi Bhavan, a place where a lot of stockists are located. Medical representatives, field managers often gather there at the end of the month, and it's a good opportunity to get the pulse of the market. I didn't want to miss it, and I landed there. So when I was there, I noticed one young representative sitting in a corner, and he was in deep thoughts. I wondered if he had completed his targets. I just thought maybe he has not completed his targets and that's why he's sitting in the corner. We got talking. He said, yeah, I achieved my targets this time, but I wish I had a magical wand. मेरे हाथ में कोई एक जादू की छड़ी होती, वो मैं ऐसे घुमाता मेरे प्रोडक्ट लिस्ट पे और मेरा हर एक प्रोडक्ट यूनिक बन जाता. इतना लेवल तक कि डॉक्टर मुझे बुलाते और बोलते, आजा बच्चा बैठ सामने, मुझे तेरे ब्रांड के बारे में सुनना है, and I would detail out my brands to him. I could see sparkle in his eyes, and I could also see his pain, that despite traveling sometimes 5 kilometers to meet a doctor, all that medical representatives at times get to hear, I have no time, just leave behinds or leave your material and go. And that actually got me thinking. It also took me back to a conversation I had with Dr. Ganesh Deshpande. Ganesh had once told me if a sales representative finds it tough to get HCP's time, as an R&D professional, I take it upon myself and I work harder to give him a product that the market needs. And since that day, I always wanted Dr. Deshpande to be part of my podcast. And I'm so happy today that he's here. I could persuade him to be here. And I'm going to ask all those questions I have in mind, and that those thoughts which actually he helped me come across was, how can one create a product which has a pull in the market, demand in the market, and it also gives extra time to the medical representative in a doctor's chamber. So let me first of all formally introduce Dr. Deshpande. So Ganesh is based in New Jersey, USA. He's a co-founder and CEO of Advino Healthcare, a pharmaceutical company focused on discovery and development of innovative therapies. He brings over 25 years of experience in the global pharmaceutical industry, R&D, category management, and business development. Prior to this current responsibilities, Ganesh worked with GlaxoSmithKline as the Director of Global New Product Research. Over the years with GSK, he worked with increasing responsibilities in product development, product research, and innovation groups. Ganesh completed his bachelor's and master's degree from University of Mumbai and his PhD from University of Iowa. So welcome Ganesh, welcome to this episode of Complexity to Clarity, and all ears to know how can one make product unique so that it has a pull in the market.
Thank you very much, Gauri, for a nice introduction. I'm really excited to be here. Actually, I'm really thankful for inviting me to this unique topic, which is very close to my heart. I'm very passionate about using this, that is consumer insight based development, to bringing products which your medical representative can take it to the doctor for that last mile and get that excitement. So I'm happy to share all those things here to your audiences. How can we do that and how can we achieve that?
Yeah. So, Ganesh, what really intrigues me is that despite being part of pharma industry, you often use this word consumer-based R&D. Now, we here in India, we do talk about patient centricity, we do talk about adding value to patients, but you seem to be consciously using the word consumer. So, what is this consumer-centric R&D? Why this word?
Okay. So let me just say that you are asking a very, very insightful question. Is it consumer or patient? So the goal of all our product development is to develop a product with keeping patient at the center of all our development. So patient is the heart, and we have to develop everything around it to make sure we relieve their conditions, we help them to achieve what they want to do, improve their quality of life, and in doing that, meet their or manage their activities and manage their requirement appropriately. That's the winner. That's what we have to do it. So we have to keep patients as the center. So I always feel that the things are changing with the abundance of internet like Google. Almost every patient, and I'm using patient here, is bombarded with a lot of health information. So they are aware of it. They know what they are probably having, or when they visit doctor, they know what they are looking for. So today's patient has so much exposure to all that information, and based on that information, they come up with their own criteria, what treatment they want to do, which doctor to go to start with that, what are their expectations from the therapy, what they are going to use, what are their options, and based on all that, today's patient behaves like a consumer. So our target is still patient, but that patient is no longer a patient, but is a consumer. His thinking is changing. He's looking more for his options and customize his own treatment. And then he will ask that to the doctor. So I would say that consumer-centric is more fitting term as compared to patient-centric. So they are the same, they are not different, but just the behavior is changing. Their needs are changing. And as pharmaceutical industry, we need to look at this shift and see how can I achieve my target by providing what that consumer is looking for.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yes, across the world, we are seeing this change happening where patients are behaving more like consumer, where they want to choose the right treatment, then decide which medicine to be on, whether to be. So they are not anymore passive participant into the process, but they are rather very active members who want to discuss and decide.
Yeah.
And aptly so, yeah, their behavior is more and more becoming consumer directed than simple a patient where he is sitting and listening to experts' advice and not having
Correct.
really much to say. It
Absolutely. Earlier, over the counter where you can just go and buy. So that were really consumer. But we started to see that even in prescription area, patient go to a doctor and ask for his very specific requirements that I want to have this. I don't want to have this side effect. Give me something which either make me not sleepy or, you know, or I have a meeting tomorrow. So make sure you give me a medicine which does not make me sleepy. So earlier days, doctor would have just prescribed and that patient would have just taken it. But that has been shifting a lot recently.
Absolutely. But Ganesh, do you think this is still a more of a boardroom discussion, or it's something that consumer centricity is part of meeting room agenda? Do you really think it's happening? It's nice to have term, just like a good buzzword, but is it really happening? And particularly in the US, do you see it happen?
Well, very interesting question. It depends on the company. There are companies which like to talk about consumer centric, like to talk about customer feedback, etc., etc. But in reality, that stays only in their mission statement or their communication to shareholders or public. But in reality, they do not support this patient centric approach. However, there are many companies, particularly I have seen in the US and in Europe, they focus so much into consumers, getting feedback, getting to know what they are looking for, and then appropriately change their products to meet their criteria. So they have something called the culture of innovation, the culture of customer based innovation, because in long term, that's going to help or that helped them a lot. So there are genuine companies which support this. And I'm really fortunate to work for a company which worked in this area, one of the pioneer company, GSK, which used consumer insight as part of their all the developments. So it's not just buzzword. People are using it, companies are using it, and you are seeing successful products in the market.
Okay, that's interesting. Can you give some examples? Because what do you really mean by consumer centric R&D? I mean, how different would it be? Do you have any examples that can elaborate more on this point?
So, so I would say about 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago, companies started to incorporate consumer feedback. It was always there, but earlier it was marketing groups running some focus groups and coming up with their requirements. And then there were great scientists who would work on develop great technologies and push for that to launch those technologies in the market. So it was like a silos, two silos sitting side by side but never interacting. Well, some of these companies took a challenge on them and they started working to get those two groups together. So they use this consumer insight from very early phase in early prototype development or even looking at the early ideas. What are the need gaps and how technology can bridge and going back and forth. And they have used it throughout the process, all the way to including post-marketing activities. So it's a
Mhm.
very powerful tool. It requires a culture, it requires a lot of efforts to make it happen. And again, as I said, I was fortunate to be part of that and work on many of those products, seeing from early stage development to launches.
So, any example, anything that our audience would like to know how this entire consumer insight was brought into R&D, the research and development
Sure,
part of the organization.
sure. So I worked for Glaxo. That's one of my major role there, and in different phases I worked. But one of the categories I worked was smoking cessation. And we have done a lot of work on smoking cessation. So, just for a background to your audience, smoking is a huge epidemic, even as of today, huge epidemic on humankind. There are smoking rates are going down, but they are still way higher than what one would expect. So it's a huge thing. So smoking and those who are either smokers or ex-smokers can know. It's a very, very addictive thing. Smoking is very addictive. And it's a very complex. When you look at it, smoking is chemical, which is nicotine. It is behavioral, and it's psychological. So think about when you smoke, the cigarette has or tobacco leaves has nicotine. So with the first puff, you get that nicotine oil converted into nicotine, getting into your brain and attaching to the nicotinic receptors. And then there are a lot of things happening in body in literally in milliseconds, where you start to feel a behavior, a happy behavior. So you feel that happy things happening, the feeling of happiness, the proud, you feel good. So that's a chemical attachment. That's what the nicotine is doing to the receptors and making you happy, pleasure. But it's also behavior. So think about someone opening a pack of cigarette, putting it in the mouth, using a lighter to light it, take a couple of puffs and feel aha. So that's a behavior. It's a ritual. And many times you do it with your friends. You walk out of the building, walk away from your desk and do it. So it's a very unique behavior. And then there is a psychological, which is triggers. They are happy triggers. When you feel happy, when you feel a little bit stressed, you want to smoke. Or sometimes you want to smoke when you are alone. So when you combine all these three things, smoking becomes very, very complex. And now quitting becomes even more complex. Now, many smokers know that it's not healthy for them. In fact, that will kill them. But either they cannot stop or they don't want to stop. So if we are working on a category where you want people to change their behavior, stop their smoking, you have to go an extra mile for that. And for that, you have to understand what those consumers are, what they're really looking for, and how can we work with them to get them off that smoking. So very, very, I'm very fortunate to work in this category where GSK was just starting to work and bring those R&D and commercial group together to understand what our needs are and how can we do it. There are already a lot of products in the market, and that's called as NRT, that's nicotine replacement therapy. So I can tell you, those who try to quit smoking, everyone comes as strong and say, yeah, I want to quit, and they stop smoking. That's called cold turkey. But cold turkey lasts probably a day, two, maximum for a week, and they go back to smoking. And the reason is that, as I said earlier, is the behavioral, chemical, and psychological. You are not managing those things appropriately. So nicotine replacement therapy, what it does is it provides nicotine, not nicotine oil from tobacco leaves, but nicotine salt, which provides slow and low concentration to your brain, to those receptors which are hungry for nicotine. You provide them enough and slowly wean them out of nicotine. You change behavior such a way that you're not using, using the cigarette, they're walking out from your desk. So you make that behavioral change and then slowly do it. So it's a well-established nicotine replacement therapy is well-established therapy where you use these products containing nicotine, but slow and low rate so that you don't get addicted to it. So as you said, there are many, many products in the market. There are gums, there are lozenges, there are patches, and other things worldwide. However, when you look at it, consumers are not using it as required. They still feel that this is not enough for them. So with that in mission, which GSK was always looking for innovation, what else can we do? How can we bring more innovation, which is required for our consumer, what they really deserve? So we started to do consumer studies. And as I said earlier, these are the culture they create culture where you work together with commercial and R&D. And we have done a lot of work to find out what smokers are really looking for, why they are unable to change their behavior. So it required a lot of focus groups, a lot of studies to talk to the consumer and find out what they are looking for.
Mhm.
So I particularly remember one example where we asked one person, so this is like journey, why you started smoking, what do you enjoy in smoking, why you want to quit, and have you tried quitting, and what happened. So one person, one smoker came and gave a very, very rich insight. And he said, smoking or cigarette is my friend. Quitting cigarette is like losing my friend.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So most of the people start smoking at the age of maybe 15, 16, or under 20, and they start to quit sometime around 30s and 40s. So by that time, cigarette is with them in their good times and bad times. When they're under stress, they're smoking. And when they want to quit, think about you're losing a friend. So what as a company, what as a corporation who really want to ask them to quit smoking, what can we provide to help them to get away from their friend?
Mm-hmm. So what did you do?
So that's the thing. So we worked with them, we talked to them, and there were so many rich insights.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually went to some of their homes, some of their offices, just to see what they're doing it. And I'll tell you a very funny story, because we were talking to them and we found out that one of the things they do when they decide to quit, uh, they already made that commitment, and they are sitting at their desk or sitting somewhere where they want to smoke, but they are not smoking. So they use a pencil, pen, or something, and they have broken with that anger. They feel so much angry. So something to get their stress out, something to get their anger out. So they are breaking it. So while talking to them, say, well, if we develop a product which you are not able to smoke, but you use this product, what can we do? So based on some of those insights, we develop a product. And again, this is R&D going a little bit one step ahead. We develop a product where you have to break something in order to get your nicotine product.
Your nicotine tablet out. You have to
Inside, yeah,
break
the
something
lozenge. Yes, yes.
and get the lozenge out. Okay?
Yeah,
Interesting.
because we were literally looking at some of their insights, what they will, which will make them happy, which will make them in that journey or keep them on that journey. So
Yeah.
great product, great packaging where we could break something to get it and get that anger. We share with the consumers, those smokers loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, our regulatory group came back and said there is no way we can get approval on that kind of packaging and product.
Okay.
But that's okay. These are the ideas. So it really shows what we can do, how can we do it. So how R&D can get into this, whether it's packaging, R&D, so on.
Yeah.
But then we actually went back, and there were many other insights we heard from our consumers. So we asked them what are they looking for when they are not smoking, when they want to smoke but they are not doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
the cravings were very high. So they have used several things. One of the things they said, we want something like TikTok, Tic Tac, something like Tic Tac, something like Altoid, which is intense mint, which will get your mind away from it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing which they mentioned that the current product, the gum and lozenge, it takes a really long time. It takes 30 to 40 minutes. They said, I'm having craving. I want a cigarette, which will relieve my cravings in literally seconds. Why I have to wait for 30 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
So can you give me something which is fast enough, but not as fast as cigarette, and I can continue my this quit journey? So that was a very rich insight, something faster. And then they said something I want to make sure that it will relieve my craving, but it can occupy me, do something with my hands and my ritual things. So again, this is bringing everything back, coming back, doing a lot of brainstormings. We came up with a product. It's a lozenge, but it was much smaller lozenge, which dissolves in less than 10 minutes as compared to 30 to 40 minutes, and a smaller lozenge. Now, think about it. If you have to put the same amount of drug in a smaller lozenge, it becomes very concentrated, very strong. And if you are going to put it in your buccal cavity or in your mouth for even 10 minutes, it's going to burn. So that's where R&D comes into picture. That's where the expertise come to say, okay, what can we do to reduce that burning? How can we make it more pleasant? So we started working with a lot of companies with their excipients, looking at their flavor. We worked with flavor houses to see what can we do to make that experience really rich and they can correlate to. I'm not going to go through all the development, but what we came up with a lozenge called mini Nicorette mini lozenge. A small lozenge uh, is like a size of tic tac. So you can imagine it's a small enough uh, with the same amount of drug with intense flavor and which can dissolve very fast. So that was an innovation which was really started based on consumer insights. When we shared this product with the consumer, they loved it. They loved it. They loved it for the size. They loved it for the intense flavor and the way it dissolves, how fast it dissolves and gets their craving faster. But
Interesting. Very
we didn't
interesting.
stop there.
Mhm.
One of the things which they always said that how can I work on my ritual? I'm not walking away from my desk. I'm not lighting anything, a cigarette. So one of the things which we observe with the consumer or the smokers, they like to play with their lighter. So you are mentioning, so exactly, lighter is their friend because when they quit, they continue to hold on to their lighter. And we have observed this is ethnography studies and meeting the smokers or quitters, they always kept their lighter. So we said, how can we use that lighter concept and continue with this? So we designed of course, with the packaging group, we designed a very unique package which had the lighter. It's not lighter, but the things where you have to press something and open to get your product.
Almost
So
like you light a lighter.
exactly. And
Almost the.
then when we're doing actual use study or some of the studies to find out how they are using our product, we saw them exactly how they would use their lighter. They were holding it in their hand, they were playing with it. So essentially getting their mind off the cigarette with something they are always done it. So this behavior change is equally put into this concept. So you can imagine if you want to work on a very typical product which help people, why not go an extra mile, get feedback, get insight from the consumer, and put it back into the product, which we can do it. So now I just want to say that earlier we used to have silos, right? So that's where commercial will do their own focus study, come back with some of the requirements, give it to R&D and say, develop a product. Or
Right.
R&D developing some patented product which has no meaning or no usage in actual market. But while doing this together, we are building a culture, we are building a platform, and then with reiterations, you take a product to the next level.
Wow. I mean, that is really that you were not just giving a pill, but you were giving altogether an experience to substitute the experience which a patient would otherwise, I mean, the consumer would otherwise get while smoking cigarette. I think that creation of experience is something that pharma industry has to really look into because we are somewhere getting at good safety, good efficacy area, but providing the experience is something pharma is currently lacking. And I guess probably with the way you are explaining it to me, I understand you actually provided them a behavioral change tool by providing altogether a new experience, which was a good substitute for their previous experience of smoking cigarette. Very interesting.
So there is yet another example. Now, this is something which we have done on pain management. So pain is another one which has a lot of psychological element and chemical element or the drug element. So how can we do that? So one of the example is Tylenol, which is a paracetamol brand, very famous in the US. Um, so as you say, another paracetamol, another acetaminophen product. There are many, many products. So if you are a leader, how can you continue to be a leader and provide something different or differentiated as compared to the other brand? So Tylenol is a brand which is a very old brand, paracetamol brand, and they have tablet just like anyone else. And they did a lot of consumer study to find out what they're looking for. And in consumers' mind, all are the same. There is nothing different. So why should I pay more for this particular brand versus the others? And listening to those consumers, the scientists, and again, now Tylenol was always a coated product. And that's what their image was. It used to be a capsule product, which changed into a tablet and coated with gelatin.
Mhm.
So when you add those things, it becomes even slower. So marketing and our commercial group and R&D, when they did a lot of consumer studies, they found out that we trust your brand, but can you make it faster? So speed is one of the insight we always hear for pain management and for many things. So they actually went back, looked at a lot of technologies, and came up with a very unique solution to that. And that's a tablet which is coated, but still they added holes with a laser drilling. So with laser is such a sharp and very precise, they can drill holes in the tablet, as you can see in this picture. So they created this new format or new product, which looks similar to previous one, but this can dissolve very fast. It can disintegrate and dissolve in the gastric stomach as soon as it hits water. And then you can work it out and you can study to see how fast the drug is releasing. And then you take it to assume, or you can show that it absorbs much faster. So this is Johnson and Johnson or McNeil, which was part of Johnson and Johnson, did a lot of work on that, created a buzz around their product. And then, when they did marketing, whether it's with the doctors or with the consumer, they could differentiate their product as compared to other 100 products in the market and captured a significant market share.
Mhm.
So when we think about it's a paracetamol or acetaminophen, which is forever there, you can still create innovation and establish your leadership in this. But for that, you need good insight and then a technological combination to make it happen.
Okay, so there was a tablet which had holes, laser holes, and through those holes, the drug was coming out.
Correct.
Am I right? Okay,
Correct.
and the entire tablet was to be taken as is with
As
water. There
is.
was no. Okay, okay, very interesting.
So these are some of the innovations you can see, and they are all based on consumer insights, what you can do and how can you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to pain, I'm sure nothing else matters but that time. How fast can you get relief? It
Absolutely.
is what.
Yeah, for pain, it's all speed. Speed is one of the insight we always see. Nobody wants to wait for the tablet to work in an hour or so. They want it instantly.
Absolutely. Any other example where R&D really played very important role?
One which is clinical studies, which we don't talk much about it when it comes to consumer insight based studies. but it's gaining a lot of importance now. So we always thought about formulation, packaging, coming up with great products. But at the same time, we have to show what consumers are looking for. So I'm going to use again the same example as smoking cessation, what you can do. So clinicians also are part of this studies. When we do focus group or consumer insights, GSKs, as per their culture, we made sure that even clear and the clinicians are part of that, they can listen what consumers are saying, and they can start thinking about what studies we can do to make sure we capture some of the goals what customers are which the consumers are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very unique way of looking at the clinical studies. Now, clinical studies are required for FDA submission. They are required for regulatory purposes. You can always do that. But in addition to that, there are some studies which are quality of life based studies, or there are something which captures very specific endpoints, or saying how much side effect it has versus the other product, or less side effect it has versus the other product.
Mm-hmm.
So we always heard, going back to my previous example in smoking cessation, we always talked about that craving. The gum or lozenge used to take longer time. It takes almost 30 minutes to dissolve. So the smart clinician in our group who developed at that time said, why can't we do craving studies and capture early time point?
Mm-hmm.
So craving studies are very powerful tool to say how your product is working. So for that, you give a product, the nicotine containing product, and a placebo at two different time to the same subject, and then show them a product of or a picture of a cigarette. Then
Mm-hmm.
show them actual cigarette without asking them to light it. So their craving starts to go up when they touch that cigarette or smell. So they feel like smoking. But then instead of giving or asking them to smoke, you give them this product and see if there is any change in their cravings. And you capture that one by one at 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and so on, and see if this nicotine product is working better than the placebo. Is there a difference? So usually we do it at much longer time, but the smart clinician who was based on consumer insight that they want this fast said, let's try to capture early time points, which we had never done before.
Mm-hmm.
He said we should be able to see a difference because it dissolves fast, it has intense flavors, and a small size where nicotine can come out much faster. And guess
Mm-hmm.
what? We got that in 3 minutes.
Okay.
3 minutes was the earliest point where you could see that differentiation between a placebo and the product. So that was a very powerful tool. So that the study came out, and it was a very powerful tool. We essentially handed over to the commercial group, marketing group, to say, now you have a best product, you have best packaging, now get this best claim and market it. So if we had not captured that, you wouldn't have, or marketing wouldn't have that great claim that it starts to work in 3 minutes or so. So I'm not going into too much detail of exact wording, but what clinical studies based on consumer insight do is to provide great claim and really tune up your product so that you can communicate with healthcare professionals or with your consumer.
Right.
So it's not just stop at product or packaging, but it goes much beyond that.
Right. And we in marketing, we always believe that you need to have certain cues for your brand to be remembered. And one of them is these visual triggers. And if you can capture visual triggers like this, that you actually in the studies could show that craving got controlled within so much time, and you create a visual around it, there is no looking back, because sonic and visual are two very, very strong sensory cues for brands to be remembered. I'm sure the medical representatives who really work hard in the market for brand to be recalled by the HCPs or consumers, if you are in the OTC market, I think would be really happy to know that this kind of work, even at the clinical trial levels or much earlier, can happen. So, very interesting indeed. So, question that comes to my mind sometimes is how do you get commercial and R&D professionals to work together? Because wherever I have worked so far, actually we always work probably in two different locations at times, forget two different rooms or two different buildings. So how do you see a commercial person and a R&D person come together, think together for that ultimate beneficiary who is the consumer?
Yeah, Gauri, as I said, it's very challenging. You need to have that culture. You need to have a mindset change in order to achieve that. It's not simple. So, as we said, companies have to do it. They have to really, really think and say, I am going to do this, otherwise, this will not happen. So I can give you some examples that when I started in the industry, yes, we used to have not only two different sides of the building, but totally two different locations. R&D was in New Jersey, and commercial was in Pennsylvania, which was about 500 miles from each other. So the only way we interacted was by phone, emails, and once in a while when we visited each other. But companies made that decision that we are going to co-locate everyone. So they not only came in the same building, but also in the same office. There is a concept of open office. I'm sure you must have heard. And I think GSK was another one of the pioneer company in that, where we removed all the offices. Of course, there were small offices for one-on-one meetings or teleconferences. But most of the people sat, those who work on a particular category, you work together, you sit together. It's called a kitchen table. We used to call it kitchen table because that's where most of the discussions happen. So a packaging person, maybe a commercial brand manager, and insight person. So everyone sat together. Of course, there were a lot of issues in the beginning. Who's going to talk, why you're speaking so loudly on your phone, and so on. But those were early hurdles. But what we achieved is really working with each other, working on the same product. So you don't have to go or call someone, just bring that person in and do it. We actually led this to saying that let's go together, let's work together, go together, attend focus group, sit there, come back together and discuss what we learn in that same day, rather than waiting for our meetings. So these were the real push coming from the organization to change your culture. And by changing that, it really, really helped. So we used to do something called shadowing each other. So the marketing person actually worked for a week, 2 weeks with a scientist just to see what is this dissolution testing is, what is your tablet press, how does that work? Or on this other side, from the R&D group working with commercial to say what is the call, how do you make those calls at different accounts, what do you talk, what do you ask them? So it's really bringing two groups together and working as one. When you combine those groups together, you think similarly to achieving a particular goal.
That's indeed very, very interesting. I think a lot to learn from. Uh, so, just moving to the next question. Are there certain methods which you thought were really useful for getting consumer insights? Is there anything that you would vouch for as one of the options to get the insight?
Well, the gold standard is always the focus groups. We have seen of what consumers are saying. So in my mind, that's one of the top one, but that's not the only one. We always go back and talk to the consumer depending on what category you're working on. As I said, smoking, right? So smoking, we are talking about the smoker's journey. So ask them, it's one-on-one meeting, why they want to quit, and so on. So that really helps. But that's not the only one. We can always go back and do ethnography studies. I was
Mm-hmm.
part of several studies where we actually travel in China, in Europe, and look at some of the brands, how people are buying them, when they are buying, how do they use it. Not only that, we visited their homes to see where do they store,
Mm-hmm.
how do they share within their family if it is pain management, how do they use, who uses which product and so on. So that gives very rich experience. There is another thing which is the advocacy group. So I'll give you one example. um, I was working on a weight control category, and always I had my blinders that, like smoking, which is also a behavioral category, that you can just stop smoking. Why can't people, those who are trying to lose weight, why can't they just stop eating? That's what they said. No, you cannot. So one of the things which we do in one-on-one interviews, when I was working with weight control category, focus groups are great, but you're sitting along with other five, six people, and nobody wants to talk about their weight. How can they do it? So the information you get in that focus group was totally different than when we had one-on-one with the weight control category.
Mm-hmm.
They opened up so much when you talk and say, yeah, we are working on new product for weight control. And it was so rich information. So we heard that people want to eat, they love eating, they don't want to deprive themselves of a food which they love particularly. And they're saying that if I deprive myself, I will eat more the next time when I'm emotionally disturbed or something. So they were telling us that come up with something where I can sprinkle it, something on my food, something I love, so I will eat just less. Sprinkle something which will not change its taste or its flavor, but it will give me a portion control. So those are very, very rich insights, which we didn't find those in other ways. So we worked on some products where you can sprinkle or some small liquid you drink just before eating your favorite food. So you can eat it, but you won't eat as much.
Okay, so you created a product which you can consume before you start your dinner or lunch, your meal, or you simply sprinkle it on your food
Correct.
so that you feel satiated much earlier and you control the portion that you're eating.
They want to eat their food, but not as much as they used to eat. So that's where these satiety products came. And we worked very closely to make sure that do not change their flavor, they don't change their taste, and so on. So it was very unique insight, and then unique products. One of the big trend now we see is the social media. There are a lot of things in social media. There are a lot of things happening which you can capture and learn from it and find out where they're going.
Absolutely. And all those things which you get on social media are real time, they're honest, and they are said in the exact words the way consumers feel their pain. So I think there is a rich data out there and it is open for every marketing person and of course R&D person to go and capture those insights. We have been doing it, I mean, very successfully for past few years, and it is indeed very rich data that you get.
So,
Great.
so you were asking where can we get uh, insights? So of course, you have different methods, and they have all their positives and negatives. But it depends on how and which category you want to use it, and then use it appropriately.
Right. And very interestingly, you said you actually go to their homes and you talk to them in their setting to understand where they are coming from. I remember in advertising, we used to always say that talking to a lion in a forest is a one thing, and talking to the same lion in a zoo is another thing. You will never get to know the lion in zoo. For that, you have to go and venture in the forest. So, absolutely same for consumers, patients, doctors, any stakeholder, going there and being with them and understanding their pain points is key for anyone who is in this industry. Very interesting part.
I may add now that things are changing with social media. And we talked about it earlier, that social media, where you get lot of information, rich information, live information when it happens. And when people do it themselves, they're open. They don't take anything back. They just either say good things or bad things all the way about a product. So sometimes it's difficult, but you have to look through that to see what really consumer think about your product. What are they looking for? And that gives a very rich insight.
With you. And today there are technologies where you can listen to your customers, your consumers on social media, where there are real time discussions are happening and there are honest views out there. So it does make a lot of sense. So in your view, what are the trends, significant trends that you're seeing across in the entire consumer behavior, the way it is changing and the kind of products that are coming into the market? So are there any key trends that you have spotted very recently?
Actually, things are changing. Things are changing, and trends. We can look at different trends. One of the big thing which we hear from consumers is speed. I talked about earlier. Nobody wants to wait, whether it's allergy, whether it's pain, whether it's, as we said, smoking control or craving relief. Speed is always the king. So we'll continue to see products which are providing that speed in the market. So we are looking for whether it's paracetamol, which Tylenol example I gave you, which releases fast. With the study, it can show it's working. So it's all about that speed. There are a lot of prescription medicines. They are going and showing that whether it's perceived speed or actual speed is based on ODTs, orally disintegrating tablet, which is nothing new. It's been there. But how can we now convert that ODT into real effect, real efficacy? So that's where things are changing. So you will see a lot of new products which not only see visually or perceived speed, but in reality providing the actual fast relief. So that's happening in the market. So you will see a lot of new products. The second thing is we see is the convenient or on the go. Again, that's not a new concept, but we started to see a lot of new products, whether it's a liquid, it's a sachet with powder, which you just put it in on your tongue on the go without any water. You can just have it, because we hear when I need my medicine, I don't want to wait till I go home or till I find water and take my tablet. So that's the insight we're looking at. There are certain liquid products, put it in a sachet. You can use it as an antacid. So when you are in restaurant, you're going and you know that you're going to have heartburn or some acidity. Why not take it with you rather than carrying a big bottle? So they will continue to grow. And again, it's not main, it's the portfolio. To complete your portfolio, these products sit very nicely. So that way you have options. At home, you can try big bottle, but when you are in restaurants or on the go or traveling, you can always keep your sachets with you. Same thing with tablets and liquids and powders. There's a big big area I see which is growing is the non-medicine medicine. Mm-hmm. So I will say what that not medicine is, that people are taking so many drugs, particularly seniors and even younger. Why? Their question is why I want to take another tablet which I can substitute with something simpler. So just to give you the example is gummies. Right? Gummies is fun. Gummies is fun. You ate it as a child. So what if my medicine is in this form? I will enjoy it. And they are not for serious medicine, or at least they started not for serious medicine. They started for herbal supplements, vitamins. So there are some examples, as you know, about 5, 6 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago, very few products you saw that had, or gummies that had a natural ingredient, and just use it. But looking at their success, looking at how consumer take it, they have become larger and larger.
Mhm.
So they started with supplement, as we can say magnesium, or we look at sleep medicine, or probiotics or fibers into gummies. Slowly they started to move towards more OTCs, antacids. So already antacids uh, have gummies. And not only that, they started move into other adjacent categories as cough and cold. There are dextromethorphan soft chews, so
Yes.
which is they use it in under Theraflu brand. So they want to move and capture that non-medicine medicine. And
Mhm.
here it's very very unique that why I want to take another pill.
Right.
Okay? So if we look at that, it's still moving in other direction, which is if you are taking a Senna or something for constipation, a lot of people take it almost every night. So rather than taking another pill for constipation, why not take a tea?
Herbal tea, which has
Herbal
said.
tea, but which has senna, so which is very very unique. So it's not any tea, but it's especially made for senna. Uh, so those products are gaining popularity. Now, another example we see is again, which fits your daily life. So tea is something which a lot of people drink before going to the bed in the US or in Europe. So that's one thing. There are some herbal products, ashwagandha and few other, which are now in teas. So it not only convenient, but it gives you that daily routine.
So
And
you're
then
taking.
fibers.
So it's a wonderful thing that you're taking medicine, but then actually you don't feel as if you're taking one. And India is non-pill popping nation. India hates pills.
Correct.
And for Indians, maybe, this can be a very good way of creating products which don't look and feel like medicines, but do the effect or the benefit that is needed by the patients.
Correct. Correct. So that's the trend. The very uniquely Metamisel, which is a very well-known brand in the US for fiber, they have created cookies or biscuits. So think about you're using cookies or biscuits, which you take your daily requirement of fiber, but without really taking another pill or another glass of mucilage.
Right.
So that's the trend.
Yeah, I can imagine mukhwas, or which Indians generally have after their meals, can actually be their medicine. One can have some
Absolutely.
ingredients added there. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's a big trend. We see a lot of things happening there, and if we go back to those gummies and other, they will continue to grow. I'm sure there will be few other innovations. We already see, the gummies with soft center
Mhm.
that gives very unique characteristics, but also provides real estate for two separate drugs. So, so I think it's a changing world. There are some technologies, some products I have seen they're very early stage, very interesting. The time will tell whether we can consistently make it at a very low cost and provide what our consumers are looking for.
Absolutely.
The fourth trend we see, which is in my mind, which is growing significantly, is embracing naturals. So we always use natural products, but there's a big trend going in the industry, particularly from patients, that why do I want to use preservatives in my products? Why do I want to use artificial dyes and flavors? So things are changing, and we are hearing this more and more that color-free products, natural flavors, and preservative-free products. So there are companies which are taking that insight and developing their product. So I would like to just mention one company, which is Genexa. So Genexa is a company which has a lot of products in the market, but they are using and openly saying that we have 0% additives versus more than 90% unwanted fillers in our competition. Now, think about that when you have a standalone product which significantly less ingredient, consumers like it, they want it, and they have used it, and they constantly or continuously told us that take out all those unwanted ingredients. So that's where things are happening. So uh, you can look at some of the products what they have in the market, and it clearly shows that this is where the industry is moving, or they're forcing industries to move towards it.
Right.
The other trend in this natural, we see that very well-known brands like Vicks, for example, there is a sleep medicine called ZzzQuil, which is by Vicks. They have doxylamine as one of the ingredients in their products. People take it, and a lot of people take it almost every night to help them sleep. So they are now saying, do I really need to take a drug when I can take melatonin or some other natural products? So these big companies are now going in the nutraceutical products, but coming from a big company, consumer feel that they are now providing me appropriate strength, quality, and so it adds value. So Vicks has just launched from ZzzQuil brand, but pure Z's, as you can see, which has melatonin, chamomile, and lavender, which helps them to sleep anyway. And not only that, they are even in gummies. They are coming in gummies. So again, consumer-friendly product, which they are not taking another pill, but something which can stay with them, which can work with them. So that's the shift happening. So they will continue to have a drug product, but in addition to that, a supplement just to complete the portfolio, and consumers can choose what they prefer more.
Right. Very interesting.
Then another thing, which is, I would like to mention this example. There is something developed by a pediatrician for his own child. When the child was young, he said he's coughing. Coughing doesn't mean always needs a drug. Sometimes you just need to soothe child's throat. And as a home remedy, we always use honey. So this pediatrician, who's MD, he thought, why not use honey and calm my child? And he developed a product called Zarbee's. So the thing is, he started making other products very similar to that. Everything has no drug, no alcohol, no artificial ingredient. Everything is natural, and everything is based on honey. So this product slowly, one by one, he started launching, made a big company, it's Zarbee's, to a point that it was acquired by Johnson and Johnson as their natural ingredient product. And even today, that products are working very nicely, very appropriately. So that's the shift. So consumers are looking for something better, something for their health. And as we said earlier, they are patients, but they are more of consumers. They have more choices, and they are looking for those choices. And these are some of the trends which will continue to grow. We have to just see what really sticks versus what continues to grow.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. And actually, that brings me to the next question that we talked about innovation, having formats, different packaging, everything to get the product aligned to consumers. But India is all about affordability and accessibility. Now, doing all these innovations, would that cost more? And then, if yes, it is not a solution for Indian patients in general. So, what do you have to say about the cost versus benefit?
Very interesting question. But if you think about it, we are not adding cost. What you're doing is spending your money effectively. You do spend money, and if you, at the end of your product development, your product does not fly, it does not meet the unmet needs, your product is not going to go anywhere. But if you use rightly, or you spend money appropriately, efficiently, you can make use of all those insights and develop a product which is very unique, which separates from other competition, and you're delivering to exactly what your consumers are looking for. And if we take a step back, you in commercial, in marketing, are already running clinical focus groups. You're doing all the studies. Just add 2, 3 people from R&D so they can hear firsthand what your consumers are saying. Of course, they are coming from a different angle, their different view. That will enrich the outcome of that focus group. When you meet outside, you can always think, aha, this is what I can do. This is the technology which fits exactly what's missing from this communication, or what these consumers are missing. So you're not doing anything more, you're just doing it more efficiently. And look at some of the examples. I think I briefly mentioned about Advil. So Advil, it was, in the US, everything has to be child-proof, where opening those Advil bottle was very difficult. And that's where listening to the consumer, the arthritis patient, packaging person came up and said, I want to use the very simple notch on the top of the bottle, where people with arthritis condition can just put a pencil or pen and twist it much easily. Right. That innovation didn't cost much to produce. So whether it's in India or outside, it should not add significant. And I think by including R&D in this, we can always think about what is the best solution, what we can do, how can we do this efficiently. Now, of course, you cannot spend more than what people can afford, or ask for what people can afford, but at least this is a good way of getting those insights, putting that, and get it ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ganesh. It was indeed very insightful. First and foremost, I think you made a very important point that patients are changing. They are becoming more and more like consumers. They want choices. They want to act actively into decision making. So it should not be just something that is prescribed, but something that also should be preferred. Very interesting point I think this conversation has told us is include R&D professionals while you're meeting consumers, while you're meeting your customers, and let them listen to their stories, their pain points, their needs and wants firsthand. So maybe the solutions that would come in form of either product packaging or even certain studies that you would conduct would be more enriched. And lastly, I really feel, which is a very important point you said, is that add value, and it need not necessarily be adding cost. Value is more important. Cost might not really be high. Thank you so much, Doctor, for spending your time with us. And thank you for giving all those examples which brought the points live and which makes us connect so well with the customer, his pain points, and the consumers ultimately solving their problems. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Gauri.
Pleasure.